What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Game, and we're on the verge of something potentially disastrous, but we're on the precipice of something very interesting. And I say this in both a worried way, a negative way, and a positive way. Although, is that both? That's really three things. But here we are. I'm recording this about an hour and a half before the midnight launch here in Ireland and the UK of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, this is obviously going on digital times, or if you're in one of the places around the countries that do a midnight launch. But anyway, the point is, for probably the first time in history, a mainline Pokemon entry has been officially developed for for a home console. Because yes, don't forget, while fanboys will tell you that, oh my god, a hybrid system handheld. No, the Switch is officially a home console as per Nintendo. So it will be judged as such and accounted for. So, anyway, not only are we just on the very, very edge of this happening, but we're also on the edge of the most, probably at least anyway, the most divisive Pokemon game in history. Not just mainline entry, but just Pokemon games in general. I feel like this is definitely the most divisive one in history. There are so many reasons for all of this. Now, I'm not going to get into the massive detail here because this video will be 45 minutes long. But in this one, we'll scratch the surface a little bit. We'll give it a little bit of info when it comes to just a tip. Or hell, we might even go two knuckles deep, but we're not going whole hog. So, when it comes to Pokemon Sword and Shield, these, like I said, are very, very divisive games for so many reasons. There are huge glaring issues and glaring problems from both a development side, design choice side, whatever it is side, communication side, etc., etc. Many of these are leading to what the majority, or at least what seems to be the majority anyway, then again there's vocal minority, I guess, of fans to say that this game looks to be one of the lowest quality entries ever. Which I am partially inclined to agree with, mostly inclined to agree with. I would say maybe 75 to 80% inclined to agree with, because so many things out there in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Sure, they've been showing stuff off for such a long, long time now, and they've even been showing too much, arguably. And then, of course, there's all the leaks, and earlier this week, many people, significant amount of people by the looks of it, have got copies of the game early, and they've been putting up so much info about the game that was not known and is extremely negative. Now, I'm not going to say people are just being very negative for the sake of it. These people are clearly fans, they're buying Pokemon games and whatnot. And yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride. I'm sure if you've looked anywhere on the internet, you have seen something along the lines of this. And of course, you cannot trust reviews. That is an example 100% because, well, let's look at MGS5. So many glaring problems about absolutely everything, reported in every review, still a 69 out of 10 Kojima masterpiece. And of course, the same is going for Pokemon. The game is getting stuff like 9.5, 9.8, 9.2, 9 out of 10, and it's still citing massive glaring issues as cons, which would knock, 5 or 6 points off a game in any other review. But people are afraid to review against Pokemon. Anyway, back to my point. These things that are major issues with the game. Some are minor, some are major, some are mind-bogglingly changed for whatever reason it is. Some are just so rudimentary and some basic and so fundamental that you don't even think that something like this could possibly be broken or messed up. And, well, this of course has led to the, quote, real fans, unquote, coming out of the woodwork and trying to do whatever it is they do. Now, when it comes to some of these features, we have significant ones like the removal of the national Pokedex. Now, this is a huge, huge issue for many reasons. I am adamantly against the removal of the national Pokedex. The entire gimmick of Pokemon for over 20 years is literally the tagline of the game. gotta catch 'em all. There are times in the past where developers, where producers, where directors, where people high up involved in the Pokemon company, or Game Freak I should say, have said that the ability to play with your Pokemon, your old existing Pokemon for previous games in new gens, is core to the experience and that they would never ever remove them. Of course, that has now been a complete shit show. Not to mention, on top of that, we have this one isn't strictly limited to Sword and Shield because Sun and Moon also did this, so they were guilty of it too. But the lazy edition, if you will, of existing Pokemon getting a new form, which is arguably just a palette swap with maybe one or two minor extra character adjustments and art adjustments in there, and calling it a day and counting them as a couple of new Pokedex entries. A couple of examples of this: Alolan Meowth back in Sun and Moon. Then you had stuff like Alolan Persian, again, count as two different Pokemon in the, all new Pokemon and whatnot. Same deal with what we have in Sword and Shield. You have Galar Region Pokemon, which are existing Pokemon, usually from Gen 1, I've noticed so far anyway, and they just look a little bit different. Very, very slightly. Weezing, for example, has two giant chimneys on top of it, and that's it. There was another one in there too, I think it was Ponyta, which has a much more extravagant mane, and, well, it's just different colours. And of course, because of Rapidash and whatnot, well, these are all counted as new Pokemon entries, if you will. But the big crux of this entire issue is the removal of the Pokedex, the national Pokedex. Every single other game, mainline entry at least anyway, has had the ability to bring forward your Pokemon, to bring forward that national dex. In fact, I was just talking about this on Twitter with someone earlier. I don't remember off the top of my head if it's Pokemon X and Y, or if it's Alpha, Sapphire, and Omega Ruby. But I am 99% sure it's Ruby and Sapphire. You could bring forward practically every single Pokemon from every single generation into that game. That's huge. There were several hundred Pokemon. I believe it was like 700 or 800 at the time. I think it was in the 700s. But to be able to bring them all the way from the Game Boy, transferring it to the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, to the DS, to the 3DS, through all those games, you could do that. And you could bring them all across. Now, one of the many reasons that they cited the reason for the removal of the National Pokedex, several of these reasons actually, are complete bullshit. One of which has always been balance. They've always said that it will be nearly impossible to balance. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with Pokemon games over all of this time, but Pokemon has always been horribly balanced. So personally, I find this idea and this excuse absolutely laughable. Now, there's many other things in this as well. Another huge and significant reason that they've quoted for this, and again was deemed absolute bullshit by everyone, in fact, it's basically been proven to be a lie, is they have always said that, we're bringing all these Pokemon, we're creating all these new ones, all the higher quality models with higher quality assets and whatnot too, higher quality animations. But of course, people have got into the game. And people have looked at these character models. There are many character models in Sword and Shield that actually have a lower polygon count than some of the later 3DS games, like Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Sun and Moon, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So technically, these are lower quality animations, or should I say lower quality models and assets. There are also, if you've seen them out there, there are many videos where these, quote, higher quality animations, unquote, are absolutely laughable. For example, you have Pokemon that just sit in a static position and just hop up and down. There's not even an animation. The character model stays static and it just hops up and down. And of course, that counts as a move. So there are, this has been proven to be bullshit, of course. So naturally, everyone was upset about the whole thing with the character models and the animations and assets and whatnot, which again is absolutely shoddy. Visuals and performance is actually, you know what? Before I go any further, The whole national Pokedex removal thing, which has been widely criticized and, well, pretty apparent anywhere you look, pretty much all over the English-speaking internet over the last couple of months, ever since it came out. Well, none of this has been communicated to the Japanese player base for fear of backlash and retaliation. That's right. The biggest and most divisive removal from the entire series of over 20 years that the whole thing it basically is the crux of was not communicated in any way, shape, or form to the Japanese audience. The Japanese audience only found this out several days before launch when people were getting copies early and finding out the hard way. Naturally, Japanese Twitter exploded and was not happy, as you would expect, as they are rightfully, justifiably done in that regard. I completely agree with them, because think of all the times we were told about it, it was talked about and whatnot too, all in English-speaking stuff. All about the removal of the Pokedex, the national Pokedex. Woo lad. Anyway, back to the one we were going to talk about next. Performance. Performance and visuals. Now, we all know the Switch is by absolute no means a powerhouse in any way, shape, or form. Many games run at standard definition and extremely low quality and extremely low frame rates. Pokemon is not a very visually intensive game. It doesn't have to have these crazy visuals. It doesn't have 60 frames per second in order to get all this. No. But what we have, in the case of Pokemon, you have pop-in. Just pop-in, which is from several feet away. There are videos out there, you can check them out yourself, of people running down the road and trees will pop in several feet away. Pokemon will pop in. No, I shouldn't say Pokemon because they could technically just be spawning. But you can run down and you can see a shadow along a wall just traveling and rendering with you about 5 feet away. It's shocking stuff. In some of these cutscenes and some of the in-game stuff as well, you can see the characters with the extra NPCs and whatnot, all rendered in 3D form, and then maybe you go to a cutscene and they're clearly an extremely low resolution 2D image. Not a 2D rendered, not a 3D rendered model, low quality, but a 2D rendered image. It's absolute insanity. It's the same thing when you have, obviously this is now a big 3D world and whatnot too, you get into a battle in a certain place. The one I've seen used as the biggest example is you're in a hotel. You get into a battle in a hotel. What's the surrounding area when you load into the battle? It's just kind of a mist-filled void. That's it. Just kind of a mist-filled void. Nothing else around you. No room, no anything. Just a mist-filled void. Of course, the game runs and has significant performance issues in that regard. It drops frames like, well, I don't even know, like a Switch game. There you go. But I could go on and on and on. And I will to an extent. I will mention one or two extra things. Another big problem that was seemingly changed for no reason whatsoever is the online trading system. Now, you're going to have to bear with me on this one. I don't remember if it was Gen 4. I don't remember if it was Gen 5. But I want to say it was Gen 6 with X and Y. When the online trading system and whatnot, as we know it, changed into the GTS, the global trade system. It had extra things like Wonder Trade and whatnot too. But if I remember right, there was just a Nintendo Wi-Fi network or whatever it was in Gen 4 and Gen 5 when they were on the DS. But with the 3DS and the advent of that and how everything had changed, the GTS was extremely convenient. For example, you could go online with the GTS and type in, oh, I'm looking for Farfetch'd. And you could filter it. You would get all these results of people who are offering Farfetch'd. And then you could filter to say, filter to people looking for Pokemon that I have. And of course, you could do that. And then you would get all your results and you could trade online through that, someone offering whatever Pokemon you were looking for. And of course, you could give them the one that they were looking for because you had it, you filtered it, therefore you found it nice and easy. Of course, this entire system, the whole online thing with the GTS and every other feature about it, has been completely stripped, completely changed, and then completely re-added in an absolute balls up form. Many of this makes no sense whatsoever from the limited bit of information I could find about it. The reason I do say limited is the servers are not live as of the time of recording this video. Again, I started recording it about 90 minutes before midnight launch here, and just the info was not there because the servers were not there. But what we could see with the menus and the explanations and whatnot too, it seems like a disaster. It seems just like the whole... It's as backwards as Nintendo and friend codes and Mario Maker 2 and only being able to search for people's codes and stuff like that. Apparently you would have to already, it seems at least anyway, you would have to organize a trade in advance somehow because the Nintendo Switch lacks capabilities to do so through its own function, features and whatnot. And then you were given a code, share that code with whatever said person through a different piece of software or whatever it is, and then you can trade online that way somehow. Seems completely counterproductive. Again, take that a little bit with a grain of salt because we just do not know that yet. But from what we do know so far, it seems like an absolute disaster. Now, going forward again, because this video is going to be very, very long probably, we have the people who are critical of this game, myself included. We have so many people out there who want Pokemon to be better. We see all these glaring problems, these complete red alerts, these red light alarms going off, whatever it is. And we say, hey, this is a problem. We want better. We want to demand better. We see this franchise that we've known and loved and followed for so long. And we're not saying objectively sliding in, or so we're not saying subjectively sliding into disrepair. This is objective. We can see this, much of this, and much of this, if not all of this, is objective. Now, of course, that brings out the fanboys, the ones that are claiming to be the real fans, and they're saying, oh, other people, such and such, you're critiquing this, you're unhappy with this, you're a whiny baby, just don't buy it, lol, JK, it's just for 7-year-olds, bro, why you mad? It's mind-blowing that these people would come out and defend such extremely low quality. When you picked up and played a mainline Pokemon entry game on any handheld system prior, you knew you were getting a polished, high-quality experience. For the first time ever, this is not the case. This game looks like a mess and looks like an absolute disaster. Now, I'm going to round this out real quick by just throwing up one or two extra little bits of info here. This real fan debate, it reminds me of one other situation. One that I can't talk about properly. But let me just give you a quick example of the part of it I can talk about. This whole real fan debate is very prominent with some games I love. Some games that I love so much, I consider to be in my top 10 greatest games of all time. Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2. Absolutely adore these games. Beyond words, even though I've tried to put it into words so many times. Because of whatever it is that's happening, many, quote, real fans, unquote, have come out and, well, said that other people and such aren't real fans. Well, I'll leave that part alone for now. But other than that, I will say this. Despite all of these massive, glaring problems, massive, glaring flaws, fanboys gonna fanboy, all of this other stuff, of course, yes, I am still buying the game. My hype has gone from off the chain when it was first announced. I still remember sitting there in work, specifically taking my lunch at a certain time so I could sit and watch the announcement, the original initial announcement on my phone because I was not hyped. Now, I'm at complete apathy about the whole situation. Or rather, about the whole game, because obviously I do care, but I'm completely apathetic into my hype for the game. Because at this point, I have no faith in it. Or at least, I have maybe 1% faith in it. The 1% of faith I do have is my next point. Yes, I'm buying the game. Yes, I am buying both versions of the game. In fact, I'm getting the limited edition that comes with both versions of the game, as well as the golden steelbook that has the space for the two carts inside it. Now, having said that, am I expecting to enjoy the game? Yes. On a fundamental and basic level, and nothing more. I'm expecting to enjoy it as a fundamental and basic Pokemon mainline RPG. I feel like much of my experience will be tainted, not because of everything that's going on and the whole community aspect of it, but I really feel like my massive part of experience, or of the experience that I will be having, is going to be completely degraded and downgraded by all these fuck-ups, all these removals, all these changes, all these missteps, all these everything. And I am not against Pokemon changing. Pokemon has changed pretty much every generation. My only argument will be between 4 and 5, Gen 4 and Gen 5. I felt that they were two the same, so that they actually stopped playing for a little bit. But I digress. I am all about change. If it's not done just to do, if it's not done extremely poorly, if the changes make sense instead of the ones that we're seeing that make no sense. But I still think on a fundamental basic level, I will enjoy the base minimum version of the game. But that's not what I expect of my Pokemon games. I expect hundreds of replayability hours of Pokemon games. This is from someone who has put literally thousands of hours into mainline Pokemon games. And it kills me to expect not to do that. The only other game where that actually happened was Pokemon Sun and Moon. Specifically Moon, because that's the one I played. And that game was awful. That's the only Pokemon game I've ever actually disliked and hated. Gen 4 and Gen 5 I kind of got burnt out on. I felt they were kind of the same, but I didn't think they were bad games. But Sun and Moon, Gen 7, I actively actually hated them. But I'm going to leave you with my final thought. This whole debate with real fans versus quote, well, let me go again, with quote, real fans, unquote, and the, what are unreal fans, if you will, or not real fans. Which are the real fans in your mind? The ones that will blindly consume the product and will say that the company can do no wrong? Or the ones that will actually critique and voice their vocal concern about significant, glaring, negative quality drops? Which ones are the real fans?